Alright, hello 7th grade. So today we're looking at multiplying fractions. So the nice thing is that if we're multiplying fractions, there's not a whole lot of complication going on here, so this is a really nice one to be able to explain over a video. Nothing too complicated going on here because if we're multiplying fractions, we're just multiplying the tops and we're multiplying the bottoms. So nothing fancy going on with, oh, do we need to flip something? Do we need to get a common denominator? None of that. We're multiplying the tops and we're multiplying the bottoms. So if I'm taking 1/2 times 3/5, we're really just taking 1 times 3 over 2 times 5. And 1 times 3 is 3. And 2 times 5 is 10. And if we can reduce it, we want to, but this one's not going to reduce because there's nothing that goes into both 3 and 10, so that's it. Yay, sometimes things are nice. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say I got 4 sevenths times 1/3. So again, we're really just taking 4 times 1, which is 4, over 7 times 3, which is 21. So we're multiplying the tops, we're multiplying the bottoms. You don't need a common denominator. As soon as we do the common denominator thing, everyone wants a common denominator for everything. You don't need one here. We're just multiplying. We're just multiplying the tops, we're multiplying the bottoms. And this one's not going to reduce either because there's nothing that goes into 4 and 21. So that's it for that one. Now, so it gets a little bit more complicated if we do need to reduce it at the end, and there are two ways to deal with that. We could either take 1 times 2 and get 2, and 4 times 3 and get 12, and then reduce, and that's fine. So what goes into both 2 and 12? Hopefully it said 2, because really your only options for things that go into 2 are 1 and 2, and 1's not going to do anything. So we're going to divide these by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So that's 1 way gets 1/6. The other thing you could do is if back here you happen to realize that 2 goes into both 4 and 2, you could do a little bit of cross simplifying before we get to this point. So if you realize that 2 goes into both of these, we can divide both of those by 2, and that'll give you a 1 here and a 2 here. And then 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 3 is 6. So both of those work. You either end up simplifying before or simplifying afterwards. You end up getting the same thing, so do whichever one makes more sense to you. All right, now, if we've got some negatives, the big thing to remember is all that stuff we learned about in the last chapter with 2 negatives multiplied gives you a positive, a negative times a positive is a negative. All that stuff that we learned about integers still applies here. So if we have a negative times a positive, we're still going to get a negative, just like we would if those were integers. So all those rules for multiplying integers still apply to fractions. So we're going to go and multiply these. We know we're going to end up with a negative, so I'm just going to stick that negative sign out there right away. And 4 times 1 is 4. 5 times 6 is 30. And what goes into both of those? They're both even, so 2 goes into both of those. And then I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room for that negative out there. So we've got a negative, and then we've got 2 on the top, and 15 on the bottom. All right. And technically that negative could go out there, it could go up here, or technically it could also go down here. So as long as that negative is somewhere, that's fine. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put it in more than one spot. So if you're putting it up here, then it's not going down here. If you're putting it down here, it's not going up here. If it's out here, then it doesn't go here or here. So if you're ending up with a negative, you're only ending up with one negative. So only one of your things is going to be negative. So either here, here, or here, pick one. Or again, if you realize back here that 2 goes into both of those, you can do a little bit of cross simplifying beforehand. All right, same sort of thing here. We've got a negative times a negative, which is going to give us a positive. So we're not going to end up with any negatives at all here. And 7 times 1 is 7. 8 times 2 is 16. And that one's not going to reduce at all, because if we've got 7, the only thing that's going to 7 are 7 and 1. 7 doesn't go into 16, so we're done there. So sometimes you won't even have to reduce, and those are super nice. All right. If we've got a positive times a negative, we're going to end up with a negative. So we're going to have a negative there. And then 4 times 3 gives you 12. 9 times 5 gives you 45. And then what goes into 12 and 45? Hopefully you said 3. So if we divide by 3, then up top we've got 12 divided by 3 is 4. 45 divided by 3 gets you 15. And remember to not lose that negative out front. Or if you happen to realize back here that 3 goes into both here and here, then you could do a little bit of cross simplifying beforehand and get yourself right to that 4 and that 15, which is still negative. So either way, you'll end up with the same thing. Same thing either way. We got negative 4/15 either way. Okay, a couple weird things that could be happening. What if one of our fractions isn't a fraction? If we don't have a fraction, what number is automatically on the bottom anytime we have a number there? I don't want to put a number there. What can I put there? I feel like Dora the Explorer here. Hopefully you said 1. So now we've got 3 over 1 times 4 over 5. 3 times 4 gets you 12. 1 times 5 is 5. And you could either leave it like that, or if you're a fan of mixed numbers and want to turn that back into 5 goes into 12 twice, and then you've got 2 left over. So either this or this would be fine. Not going to be picky about which one you have. Same thing. Okay, same sort of thing. Just watch out for the negative sign. So we're going to turn that into a negative 9 over 1. And when you're doing that, that negative could either go here or it could go out here. We just want to make sure it's only going one of those places. So either here or here, not both. So then we got that times 7 over 12. And a negative times a positive, it gets you a negative. 9 times 7 is 63. 1 times 12 is 12. What goes into about 63 and 12? And if you're stuck looking for things that go into your numbers, a good place to look is back where we started. So we may not know what goes into 63 and 12, but I bet we can figure out what goes into 9 and 12. So 3 goes into both 9 and 12. So we're going to divide those both by 3. 63 divided by 3 gets you 21. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. So you don't have to turn it into a mixed number, but we do want to simplify it if we can, and that negative just needs to not disappear. Or if you turn that back into a negative 5 and 1/4, that would also be okay. If you're turning it back into a mixed number, though, you do want to make sure that that negative is going out here, not here or here. So if it's out here, it doesn't really matter whether you put it here or here or here. If you're turning it back into a mixed number, that does need to go on the outside. All right, what is it? Both mixed numbers. So if we have some mixed numbers, then we're going to want to turn those into improper fractions. And really the big thing there is realizing that we want to do that rather than just going, oh, well, 1 times 2 is that, 1/5 times 1/2. Nope, don't do that. Okay, and the reason you don't want to do that, by the way, is if we're taking 1 1/5 times 2 1/2, if we're thinking about that like sides of something, if I've got 1 here and then 1/5 of that, and then I've got 2 here and 1/2. I draw that a little bit bigger. The reason you don't just want to take this times this and then this times this is that's only giving you 2 parts of the puzzle. So 1 times 2 would give you this part. 1/5 times 1/2 would give you this part, but we're still missing those 2 in between. So that's why you don't want to just go this times this and this times this. Okay, so that's why I want to turn them into improper fractions, because then we can take the whole thing here times the whole thing here. So we're going to turn 1 1/5 into 1 times 5 is 5, plus 1 gives you 6. 5 on the bottom. And then we got 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 2 on the bottom. And again, if we're turning mixed numbers into improper fractions, we're taking the outside number times the bottom plus the top. So outside times the bottom plus the top, which you probably already have somewhere, but if you didn't take your notes home, that might be a good thing to jot down. So now we're taking 6 times 5, which gives you 30. And 5 times 2, which gives you 10. Ooh, hey, what goes into both of those? They both ended in 0. Yeah, they both ended in 0, 10 goes into both of those. So that's really just 3 over 1, also known as 3. So sometimes you won't end up with a fraction. Sometimes you'll end up with a whole number. So Navi's weight on Mars is about 2/5 of its weight on Earth. And if this piece cat weighs about 13.5 pounds on Earth, which is about what my cat weighs, we want to find the cat's weight on Mars. So we want 2/5 of its weight. And its weight is 13.5 pounds. Okay, so we want 2/5 of that. Of generally means we're multiplying. And a big clue to that might be that's what we're doing in this section. So yeah, we're probably multiplying. So yeah, 2/5 of its weight on Earth. So we want 2/5 of 13.5. Rich is way off. There we go. Okay, so we're going to take that 13.5 and we're going to turn it into an improper fraction. So 13 times 2 is 26. 26 plus 1 is 27. And then over here we've got 2/5 still. Now, if you happen to realize that a 2 is both here and here, you can save yourself a little bit of time at the end. If you went ahead and took this times 2 times 27 gets you 54. Over 5 times 2 is 10. That's fine, you're just going to end up having to simplify it a little bit. So what goes into both 54 and 10? They're both even, so hopefully you said 2. 54 divided by 2 gets you 27. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And it's okay if you left it like that and said 27/5 of a pound. Word problems, again, are a case where it might be more useful to turn that back into an improper fraction and think about that as 5 and 2/5 of a pound. Because I'm not sure off the top of my head, just looking at it, what's 27/5 of a pound, but if we turn that back into 5 and 2/5, we can see, okay, that's a little bit more than 5 pounds for the cat on Mars. So either one of these would be okay. This one makes a bit more sense. It is a little bit easier to look at, but this wouldn't be wrong. All right. So that is it for multiplying fractions. I will see you next time.